All right, if you've got an exam coming up on the day the dancers came, you have come to the right spot. We are going to do a total deep dive on this incredible story by Bienvenido Santos, and I mean we're going to cover everything you need to correct that test.
Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll walk through the story itself, then get to know our two main characters, Phil and Tony. After that, we'll dig into the big symbols and themes, look at the history behind it all with Santos and the Manyongs, and finally, we'll talk about that unbridgeable gap at the heart of the story. Let's get into it.
All right, first up, a story of longing. And that really is the perfect way to describe it. We're going to follow Phil's fragile hope all the way from excitement to, well, to heartbreak. The plot might seem simple on the surface, but wow, the emotional gut punch is anything but.
So picture this. It's a cold day in Chicago. The story kicks off with our main guy, Philemon Akayan. He goes by Phil. He's a Filipino immigrant, been in the States for a long time, and he wakes up to the first snow of the year. Now, you or I might just see a cold, gray day, but for Phil, it's pure magic. He's buzzing with this incredible, almost childlike excitement. And it's not really about the snow. It's because a group of dancers from the Philippines are coming to town, and he just knows, he's convinced they're going to love this snow just as much as he does.
The whole story really follows this heartbreaking four-act structure. First, you've got the anticipation. Phil is just all in. He's planning everything. He's going to clean his car to give them tours, cook them a real traditional meal, you know, the works. Then comes the attempt. He actually goes to the Hamilton Hotel where they're staying, and he offers to be their guide, their host. He even says he wants to be their servant. But then we hit the rejection. The dancers, they're young, they're modern, and they just politely turn him down. They look right through him like he's, and this is a quote, basura, garbage. And finally, the aftermath. A totally heartbroken Phil goes back home to his dying friend Tony, and that recorder he brought to capture the performance, it failed. Just silence and noise.
Okay, so that's the plot. But really, the emotional engine of this whole story, the thing that really makes it tick, is the relationship between our two main guys, Phil and Tony.
You really can't understand one without the other. They are complete opposites. Phil, he's the dreamer, right? The sentimental idealist. He lives in his memories, clinging to this romanticized idea of the Philippines. Then you have Tony. He's the cynic, the skeptic, totally stuck in the harsh reality of their life. He's sick, he's dying, and he thinks Phil's obsession with the dancers is just nuts. He literally calls them loco. So you have this amazing contrast. Phil is all about the spiritual pain of exile, while Tony represents the brutal physical toll it takes on the body.
And this is where the story gets really interesting. To get what Santos is doing, you have to look past the surface. We need to decode the symbols he's packed into this story. I mean, everything. The dancers, the snow, the tape recorder, it's all dripping with deeper meaning. So let's start with the dancers. They're way more than just a dance troupe. Think of them as a walking, breathing symbol of the Philippines itself, or at least the idealized version of it that Phil has been holding on to for decades. They're young, they're vibrant, they're everything he remembers home to be. But the key thing is, they're just visiting, they're temporary, and when they reject him, it's not just some awkward social moment. It's a symbol of a much bigger, much more painful truth. The home he's been dreaming of has moved on. It's left him behind.
Yeah, and remember that snow from the beginning? Phil has this really romantic idea about it. He thinks, hey, they're from a tropical country, they're going to see this snow and just be totally amazed. But what the snow really symbolizes is the exact opposite. It's the cold, isolating reality of their life in exile. It's this white blanket covering a world that isn't theirs. It's a constant, quiet reminder of just how far away they are from the warmth of the home the dancers represent. Okay, and then there's this incredible object, the magic sound mirror. That's what Phil calls his tape recorder. And you have to understand, this little machine is basically his last-ditch effort. It's his final desperate hope. He's thinking, okay, if I can't connect with them in person, maybe, just maybe, I can capture a piece of home. The sounds, the language, the laughter, something to hold on to.
But the failure of the recorder is maybe the most tragic part of the whole story. Because when he gets home and plays it for Tony, all he gets is this horrible, garbled noise, a screaming, senseless kind of finale. It's a brutal symbol for the fact that you just can't preserve the past. The memory he was trying to bottle up was already gone, warped by time and distance into something unrecognizable.
So when you put it all together, the characters, the symbols, it all points to the story's incredibly painful central themes. And for your exam, this is the real meat of it. It all boils down to this profound sense of disillusionment.
So what are we talking about here?
Well, first, you've got rejection. And not just any rejection, but being rejected by the very thing you've built your whole identity around. Then there's the failure of memory, like we just saw with that tape recorder. Those two things lead straight to alienation, right? That feeling of not belonging in your new country, but also not belonging to your old one anymore. And then, layered underneath all of it is mortality. The simple, sad fact of getting old and dying alone so far from home, which is Tony's whole reality. And finally, that huge, uncrossable gap between the old generation and the new one.
And honestly, nothing says it better than Phil's own words when he gets back to the apartment. This quote just cuts right to the bone. He says they looked right through him, that he was like garbage. You could just feel how crushed he is.
And this is so important to get. This isn't just him getting his feelings hurt. This is a complete demolition of his identity. For 50 years, his entire sense of who he is has been tied to this idea of home. And in that one moment at the hotel, that connection is just gone. The home he spent his life dreaming about looked him in the face and had no idea who he was.
Okay, so to really understand why this story hits so hard, we gotta pull the camera back a bit. We need to look at the historical context, because understanding Bienvenido Santos's life and the experience of Filipino immigrants, that's the key that unlocks everything.
You see, the author, Bienvenido Santos, this wasn't just fiction for him. He was an exile. He got stranded in the U.S. during World War II, totally cut off from his family and his country. So when he writes about this deep loneliness and sense of being lost, he's writing from experience. His stories became a way for him to make sense of it all, and in doing so, he gave a voice to a whole generation of Filipino immigrants who felt just as lost.
And that generation has a name, the Manongs. Phil and Tony are stand-ins for this entire group. These were the guys who came over in the first waves, often working tough, exploited labor jobs. They faced a ton of prejudice here in the States, and a lot of them carried this sense of shame or inferiority. You know, when Phil worries about being seen as an old-timer muchacho, that's not just him being insecure, that's a real fear, rooted in a painful history. The dancers, being younger, more educated, from a different class, they just throw that painful divide into sharp relief.
So, let's bring it all home. What's the big final takeaway here? The ultimate lesson of the story? It all comes down to one single idea: the unbridgeable gap.
Phil's personal tragedy is that he finally realizes that being away for decades wasn't just a pause. It created a permanent state of displacement. He's not really seen as Filipino anymore by the new generation, but he never really became American either. He's trapped in this heartbreaking limbo, this gap between two worlds, belonging to neither.
And that really is the story's most powerful, and maybe its cruelest message. You can spend your whole life remembering home, but that doesn't mean home will remember you. For 50 years, the Philippines was Phil's entire identity. It was his North Star. But in the end, the home he remembered doesn't exist anymore. It's changed, and it doesn't recognize him. It's the ultimate painful paradox. The one place you think you belong can become just another foreign land.
Which leaves us with this huge, haunting question, and it's a great one to think about for your exam. If home won't remember you, does it even still exist? In what way is it still home? That's the question at the very core of this masterpiece. Really think about that one. Okay, that's everything you need. Good luck.